We
the
good to go?
weather.
Yeah.
It's the
Are we
weather.
good to go? Sarah and EJ, we're ready to go?
It's not on 21 yet.
Okay.
I mean, Susan could wear a tie too, you know.
It's on
Good.
21 now. And I have a necklace. Remember? A tie is a necklace.
Ah,
Oh, no, you can wear a tie. Anybody
Sure.
can wear
I
a
could.
tie.
We're broadcasting, Chair, so whenever you're ready.
okay, here we go. All righty, thank you. The time now is 5 o'clock. It is October 4th, Land Use Transportation Committee. I'm Chair Greg Brusso. We have committee members Martin Moore, Hong Tran, and also we have Council President Honda and Councilmember Kochmar that I can see on here. Welcome, everyone. I'm called the meeting to order. So public comment, I believe, sir, we have one letter. Is that correct?
Yes, we have one letter. Do you want me to start that now?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'll start the timer here. So the letter reads, Dear Council members, Sound Transit staff have reviewed the proposed code amendments to allow public transportation facilities and associated parking requirements to the city center, core CCE, and commercial enterprise CE zones, where portions of the Tacoma Dome Link Extension project alternatives are located. We appreciate the continued opportunity for engagement with city and federal way staff. Sound Transit provided initial comments for consideration to city staff dated September 10th, 2021, based on the review of the SEPA, DNS, and environmental checklist materials. Sound Transit also provides the additional follow-up comments for consideration as the LUTC considers the recommendation to the full city council. Sound Transit continues to support the collaborative and proactive effort to streamline permitting by specifying light rail or commuter rail transit facility uses as permitted uses in the CCE and CE zones and clarifying what development standards are applicable to such uses. Sound Transit appreciates city staff clarifying that the minimum parking standards in the proposed code for the light rail or commuter rail transit facility use is intended to apply to a publicly accessible transit station, i.e. not accessible to operations and maintenance facilities, guideway, traction power substations, signal bungalows, stormwater management, and other ancillary facilities for TDLE. On October 5th, 2021, the Sound Transit Board of Directors adopted Resolution R 2021-05, which took action to realign the capital expansion program with a plan that allows the agency to manage the $6.5 billion affordability gap while working to deliver as much of the plan as soon as possible. Part of this adoption action deferred parking investments to the ST3 program, including TDLE-related parking facilities in Federal Way and 5 to 2038. The action also states that Sound Transit will identify opportunities to deliver flexible, innovative, and affordable ways for people to access transit stations. Sound Transit continues to be concerned that the minimum parking standards in the proposed code amendments for station opening day of service conflict with the Board of Directors realignment actions and could delay the TDLE opening date. The board's realignment action identified 2032 as the target opening date for TDLE. Maintaining this opening date for the South Federal Way Station, even with parking deferred, is a benefit to Federal Way residents in the region. While parking is a convenient means of access that Sound Transit still intends to deliver, more riders, 56%, will access South Federal Way Station through bus connections, drop-offs, walking, and biking instead of parking at the station. This is consistent with how riders access other South King County light rail stations at Angle Lake and Tukwila International Boulevard, where 53% and 51% of riders respectively access these stations by modes other than driving and parking. Sound Transit will continue coordinating with city staff on potential language in the proposed code amendment to be provided for consideration at the October 19th, 2021 City Council public hearing. We appreciate the opportunity to comment on the proposed code amendment and look forward to future collaboration with city staff on permit streamlining as agreed in the TDLE partnering agreement. Sound Transit staff will follow up with city staff in the near term to continue our coordination efforts. And that's all. That's from Karen Kitsis.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think that's all we have to too, right? Just the one letter, so. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to the committee business. Item A is approval of minutes from September 13th, 2021. So hopefully you reviewed that and take a motion when ready.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the minutes September 13, 2021 as is submitted.
I'll
Thank
second
you.
that.
Motion by Committee Member Tran, seconded by Committee Member Moore. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Our approval of minutes for September 13th are done. We're going to move on to item B, ordinance to adopt 2021 KCSW. I know I'm going to let that whole acronym just kind of go a little bit. Mr. Coelho, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Baruso. Good evening, chairpersons, Council President Honda, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see if I can share my screen. Sarah, would you mind opening up the screen for sharing?
Yes, just one moment. Okay. You should be good to go.
Okay. I don't see it yet. It says I'm sharing, but I really
I see it on our end.
I see it.
Do you? Okay. You're ahead of, oh, there I am. Okay. All right. I bring forth tonight an ordinance to adopt the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual and our addendum thereof too. Before you is the policy question. Should the City Council approve an ordinance for the adoption of the 2021 King County Washington Surface Water Design Manual and the 2021 City of Federal Way Addendum to the King County Manual? A little bit of background on this. The adoption of the 2021 King County Surface Water Design Manual, we are a phase 2 permittee, meaning that we're allowed to rely on a phase 1 permittee for our manual if we choose to do so, which would be King County in this case. Now, our NPDS permit, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, requires us to adopt a manual. We have the choice of adopting the King County manual, the Department of Ecology's manual, or creating our own. By code, we have chosen to adopt the King County manual, updating the references within the code as we do so to reflect what the current manual states. Now, the key changes to the manual are driven by the EPA, and that comes down from ecology. King County decided to make the changes based upon comments submitted by ecology on their NPDS permit. Now, the updates are based upon studies, research, and the best available treatment since the last publishing date. Based upon recent experiences, they're making changes to the hydraulic models that they allow. There's no real impact to the city. However, there are going to be some significant updates to the rural areas. As far as our addendum, the NPDS requirements are to be completed by December 31st of this year to adopt it. And the permit requires changes of the references from the county to the city. Key changes in our addendum are updates to the definitions to reflect what changes have happened since the last time we passed this through, updates in the code references to reflect changes both at the county and at the city, and then updates to the reference material, which includes quotes from the city code to reflect the changes. Now, the options that the council will have is to approve the ordinance for the adoption of it and the addendum, or to disapprove the ordinance for adoption and the addendum and provide staff with some sort of direction. The mayor has recommended that this be forwarded under option 1 to the October 19th, 2021 council for first reading. Questions?
Thank you, Cole. I just have a quick question. Were there any really big changes in any definitions, or was those additions at all?
Most of the changes in definitions were for organizations within the county that had changed names and flipped. There wasn't any real big changes in any of the definitions as used under the 2016.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Any committee members? If not, Council President Honda.
Thank you. Do most cities adopt the King County and not the state one?
Actually, within King County, it's running about 50-50. Kent has adopted their own and elected to write their own. Bellevue has done the same. A lot of the smaller cities just find it more expedient and cost effective to just adopt the King County and make minor addendum changes.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any. Okay. If not, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed agreement to the September 21st. Why do I feel like that's wrong? I think that's wrong.
I don't know.
Not September.
It is
Would that be
Should have
October
the,
21st?
October 19th.
October 19th.
Yes.
Okay. I'll start again. I move to forward the proposed agreement to the October 19th consent agenda for approval.
And it would be a proposed ordinance.
Right.
Let's make sure.
Proposed
Clarification.
ordinance.
Thank you.
Oh, it says a proposed agreement in here.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor from Councilmember Moore. Do you want to redo that real quick? So do you want me to read it so we're clear?
I can do it.
Go
Okay,
ahead,
go ahead.
Councilor Tran.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the October 19, 2021 agenda for first reading.
Thank you. Is there a second? There's a motion on the floor for the proposed ordinance from Committee Member Tran, seconded by Committee Member Moore. Any other discussion on the motion? Thank you for correction. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Pass it 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cole. We're going to move on to item C. First, it's the resolution for Mirror Lake Highland Plat Alteration. Mr. Harris, Jim Harris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Bruce. Good evening, Council President Honda and council members. My name is Jim Harris. I'm a senior planner with the Department of Community Development. And I'm going to be presenting briefly the Mirror Lake Highland Plat Alteration application. So, Sarah, can I just go ahead and share my screen for a quick PowerPoint?
You see it?
You see it?
Yep. We can see
All right. Okay, again, that's the Mirror Lake Highland Plat Alteration application. The Mirror Lake Highland Plat Alteration application summary, it's an application signed by a majority of persons having ownership interest in the Mirror Lake Highland lots. They have applied to remove Note 5 on the final plat map, and that Note 5 requires Lot 7 and Lot 13 of the plat to be affordable housing units. Quick background, the Mirror Lake Highland plat is existing. It's primarily 14 out of the 16 lots have been constructed on. It's on the north side of Southwest 312 and between about 8th and 9th Avenue Southwest, north of Mirror Lake. This is a quick vicinity map for that. Here's another vicinity map that was from when we did the final plat about 2 years ago, again from off of 312th on the north side. This is a
Hey,
quick.
Jim,
Yep.
can you try backing up your mic a little bit from your, how close is it to you? Because you're really coming in kind of scratching things. I don't know if you want to try to adjust it.
Is that better?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. I had problems this morning for the first time ever on this, and I finally had that work out. Sorry about that. Here's just a picture of the recorded plat map with the 16 lots. Again, these are the cottage housing, the small lot project. It started back in about 2008, 2009. And the summary, plat alteration is allowed in Federal City Code Chapter 18.45. Again, the application is to remove the note on the plat, which states that lots 7 and 13 are designated as affordable housing units per City Federal Way Cottage Housing Ordinance. One sec. Let me stop sharing that one. Brian's over my shoulder here trying to get me some better audio.
Okay. Yeah, it's a little, still kind of pretty scratchy. It's better. Kind of still a little scratchy.
All right, can you hear us okay? Oh, why don't you put it?
Now we got an echo.
Yeah, turn that on. Is that better? Can you hear us?
Still echoey. Yeah, something needs to be turned off somewhere.
Is that better?
That's better.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry
Much
about that.
better.
I thought I had that worked out this morning.
It's okay.
It's the first time I've ever had that problem. Of course, now I'm working in Brian's office on a different setup. So again, it's application to remove the note that requires affordable housing on lots 7 and 13. So how do you, sorry, just go.
Just go down this way for now.
Okay, so Mirror Lake Highland plat alteration summary. When the preliminary plat and the final plat were in effect, there was provisions in the Federal Way City Code to require affordable housing units under certain circumstances. And it was an affordable housing bonus in the RS zone classification, which stated in a part that the cottage housing developments that included affordable units may exceed the base level of 12 units up to a total of 16 units. In this case, it had 16 units, so 2 of those units were required to be affordable housing. The hearing examiner conducted a public hearing on the application on August 11th and has recommended the
approval of the plat alteration to eliminate that note based on the hearing examiner's public hearing and that. I'm sorry. So the primary issue with this was that the Mirror Lake Highland plat, or I'm sorry, the ordinance that required the affordable housing units for certain projects, such as the cottage housing project, was that ordinance requiring the affordable housing units was eliminated, revised last year by City Council on November 4th in 2020. And that section requiring the affordable housing was repealed in 2020. So therefore, this note to eliminate note 5, or the application to eliminate note 5, is consistent with the current code. So again, the hearing examiner held a public hearing and has recommended approval of the plat alteration. And with that, to conclude, the mayor recommends option 1, forwarding a recommendation of approval of the resolution to the city council. And I can answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from the committee members at all? Oh, you have a question? Committee member Tran, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jim, for your presentation. I do have a question regarding the 2 lots that are going to be dedicated for the affordable units. So who is going to, what is a criteria for people to qualify for those 2 units? Do you know?
Well, but keep in mind that this application is to eliminate that requirement for those 2 lots. So there would be no affordable housing requirement for the Mirror Lake Highland plat.
Mm-hmm. I see.
This was a continuation from I remember when they first applied for this, and that was in there about the affordable housing, taking it out. This continuation from that, right, Jim?
Right. Mr.
Yeah.
McCaffrey was the one who requested that about a year ago, and it was approved by council. That the code amendment was approved about a year ago. Yeah.
Yes.
So therefore, it would be eliminating the 2 affordable and making them market rate for sale units.
Right, Jim. Do you know why we made that decision? I know that we made that decision a year ago. But just kind of refresh my memory why we did what we did.
Well, I think it's I think it's in the resolution from 2020 that there was a demand for as much of a demand for middle income market rate housing units as there was for affordable units. And this was a request by Mr. McCaffrey that went up through the council process, but that was kind of the rationale that there was the demand and need for middle income housing units like the other 16, the other 14 of the project are.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but I think Cheney's on there. I think she did the presentation. Cheney, can you comment on that real quick for Committee Member Tran?
Good evening, Council, Chair Russo and Council President Honda and the rest of the committee. I would love to add to Jim's explanation for this prior code amendment. It came down to the rate at which it would be affordable, that the requirement was it be at a loss for the development and be too costly. So this requirement in the code actually would prohibit those bonus units from being built because it wouldn't pencil out. That was based on price per square foot of development and for this housing type.
I see. Thank you.
I think there's also to get, I think when we had talked about this last, about getting cottage housing here, this would be the opener to be able to do that, if I remember right too.
So this amendment could allow for a maximized cottage housing development rather than maybe a barrier to a
Right.
most optimal number of units being built.
Right. Okay.
If I could also add to Cheney, what we had seen when we looked at the previous regulations that were in place is that there had not been any housing developments that had actually utilized that provision in the code where that percentage of cottage houses had to be affordable. So effectively what we're seeing is that there were no developments moving forward at all, or we could amend the code and see some developments move forward, while at the same time, our housing action plan was in place and we were intending to provide high-level policy discussions that would provide additional housing that may potentially be lost by removing this affordability requirement of this particular housing. And so that was the justification and reasoning that we went with at the time. So even though we were losing something in this case, we weren't really losing something from the big picture, if that makes sense.
Committee Member Tran, did you have another question, or were you okay with that?
Oh, I'm okay with that. Sorry, I still have my hands up, I think.
Okay, thank you. Committee Member Moore, and then we're going to go to Councilmember Kochmar, then Council President Honda.
Thank you, Chair Brusso. I'll just ask. So just to really be clear, this is off of 312. There's currently cottages there, cottage housing. And the proposal is to move from 12 plats to an additional 16 total plats. So really just to kind of simplify this is not apartments. This is just individual housing development. Correct, Brian? I mean, I'm just simplifying this quite a bit. So
That's correct. That's a fair assessment.
okay, I mean, it's a really simple assessment, but I just want to be really, really clear. And these cottage housing, honest to God, are really exciting for young professionals, for potentially our senior population. They're just, I mean, I think they're a fantastic addition to the community, and quite frankly, to diversifying our housing options here in the community. So I don't see a reason why not to support this. So I think this is great. So thank you.
Councilmember Kochmar.
Thank you very much, Chair Brusso. Brian and Cheney and Jim, when we previously talked about cottage housing years ago, we actually had a application, I believe, on Steel Lake, which was going to be, at that time, I think it was going to be like 15 units, but they were going to be attached, and they were going to have a mutual courtyard or kind of a park area. And they were going to be, two, pretty much like the cottage housing on Mirror Lake. And that may not have penciled out because of the cost of the land. I don't know. But it was a great idea where they were going to have, two master suites, one on the top level and one on the bottom level, so that you could have two professional people living in the same household, or seniors retiring. I still love the idea. Are we going to have any more applications? That's still in our housing action plan, correct? We're still going to move forward with that idea?
Yes, that's correct.
But we haven't had any applications.
No, not yet. No.
It's in code.
Wow. Because it was such a great idea, sharing, they would share a common wall And then it would be more of a gated type of a little area, so that it would offer it some kind of a protection. But I still think it's a great idea. I hope it comes to fruition someday, but it probably depends a lot on the market and where we're all going with that. But speaking as a senior, I would love to have a plot of land where I don't live in an apartment or a high rise, where you can go out and feel like you have a community and offer some protection, and be able to feel free to leave and go on trips. So it's still a great idea. The whole idea, I guess, is to make it affordable. So thanks, Brian. I hope we get some applications in. Thank you.
Mr. President Honda?
Thank you. When we changed the code last year, why didn't we automatically drop this from their requirement? Why did they have to apply to have it dropped?
The action we're taking tonight.
Correct.
So this is a plat, is that right? We were dealing with, yeah. So this is a plat that needs to be by code. The council approves all final plats. So what you did last year was just the rules governing all plats related to cottage housing. This is an actual plat that you are approving. Altering. Yeah.
Altering.
Right.
Okay.
An alteration that you're approving.
Okay. So last year. All right. So because we didn't approve the changes last year to this plat, has that held up any construction on these two lots?
No, they're built, aren't they?
They're under construction.
Yeah, they're under construction right now.
Oh, good. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Moore, you still have your hand up. Did you have another question?
Yeah, actually, I had a comment. I appreciate Councilor Coachmar's comments on senior housing. That's I've shared it on record, or not on record, but during the meetings, that I shared the story that my parents, who raised me here, went to Arizona, retired there, and then came back. And I'll tell you what, it was extremely difficult finding housing that's pretty much a ranch-style rambler. Ranch-style rambler. Am I saying that right? Rambler? One-story housing. And it is incredibly difficult to find them in good places, good locations. And having talked to Rajiv Nagayat, which many of you guys know, that's many of our senior populations want. They don't want to be in senior high-rising apartment styles. They often just want to live independently still and live in Rambler style type housing. And so I do think that's something we ought to be looking at and seeing what we can do to kind of open up the door for such development, because I think that adds to the diversifying our housing stock. And I think it really just opens up the door for our seniors, citizens. So I'm sure more can be said about that, but I just wanted to kind of comment to Councilor Coachmar's comment, as I do appreciate it and do understand it. So,
Thank you. Any more comments or discussions, questions? Okay. Hearing, seeing none, I'll take a motion.
yes, I will make the motion, as I had the wrong agenda up last time. And I will say that I move to forward the, let me just confirm it is the same thing. Yes. Proposed resolution to the October 19th, 2021 consent agenda for approval.
There's a
I'll
second.
second that.
Motion by Committee Member Moore, seconded by Committee Member Tran. Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jane. We're going to move on to item D, Ordinance Code Amendments, Public Transportation Facilities. Mr. Jane Rogers. Mr. Rogers, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Committee Chair Burriso, Council President Honda, and Committee. I have just a brief presentation for you. If I can share my screen quick. group briefly? So, tonight would just like to talk a little bit about the ordinance and code amendments regarding public transportation facilities. The question before you is, should the committee recommend amending Title 19 of the Federal Way Revised Code to identify light rail or commuter rail transit facilities as a permitted use within the commercial enterprise and city center core zones? The proposed amendments would allow the city to apply more specific controls through development regulations, where currently they are allowed more broadly as essential public facilities. Specifically, this revised code would require the transit stations provide adequate parking for the users of the facility. Your alternatives are to recommend moving the proposed core code amendments to the October 19th City Council meeting for a public hearing, remand the proposed code amendments to the Planning Commission for additional review, or remand the code amendments to staff and provide direction. The mayor's recommendation is for option 1, to forward the proposed code amendments to the City Council for a hearing and decision. With that, I will open it up for questions.
Thank you, James. Any questions? Okay. Well, I don't see any. So if that's the case, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the public hearing and first reading on October 19, 2021.
Is there a second? Motion by Committee Member Tran, seconded by Committee Member Moore. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing seeing that, all those in favor say aye.
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 Passes 3-0. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. You got off pretty quick there.
Thank you, committee. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. So item E, Cheney, you have this for draft housing action plan and community open house, which was very well staffed, and thank you for all that. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will be just sharing my screen here. And we'll get started. Great. Good evening, Chair Baruso, Council President Honda, and committee members. I'm Jenny Scatson, Associate Planner of the City and the Housing Action Plan Project Manager. Tonight we'll be discussing the Housing Action Plan and the most recent community open house event that we hosted in person at the PAC. So before you is the policy question: should the LUTC or should the Land Use and Transportation Committee recommend adoption of the Housing Action Plan? I'm going to go over a little background. Back in July, actually, we took the draft Housing Action Plan to this committee where it was recommended or was presented and then recommended for adoption to the full council. And then on July 20th, the draft Housing Action Plan was presented to the full council. From that meeting, staff was directed to conduct an in-person open house event regarding the Housing Action Plan and evaluate and incorporate any public input as appropriate, and then return to the council committee for further discussion prior to the consideration of adoption. So that is our purpose here tonight. This year, so like I mentioned, it was on September 16th, just a couple weeks ago, from 4:30 to 7 at the PAC. We had about 40 community members in attendance. And here on the right side of the slide is, I took the map where we requested or had community members, as they enter, use a sticker to place on a map of the city and where they live. And so to the right, I have that same map, but I overlaid it with a simplified zoning map by simplified zones. So instead of every zone, it's grouped by our single family zones, our missing middle zones, which is our the single-family zones that are zoned RS5 that allow for attached dwelling units, our multifamily zones, and then the mixed-use zones. As you can see, of those, there was a total of 33 mapped dots, and we think that there are less mapped dots than there were attendees because some came as couples or from the same household. But we had 1 dot in a mixed-use zone, 3 dots in a multifamily zone, and then 28 dots in a single family zone. 29. This exercise was not only just an entry-level engagement activity, but then also was kind of provided a checkpoint for staff to assess our community outreach efforts and to consider where we're receiving input and how to be sure that it can be done in an equitable way. So now I'm going to go over some of the things that we heard and some of the topics that were themes or discussions we went over during the open house. The setting, for those that weren't able to attend, the setting was we had about 7 or 8 staff members with posters, as you can see in this photo, and the community walked in the same direction around to, prevent crowding and move in the same direction given COVID, and they can engage with staff, engage with activities, and then go over each of the proposed strategies. And then also there were posters, standalone posters of the housing needs assessment, sub-regional framework findings, and other elements to the housing action plan. So around ADUs, common themes were to reduce the cost and the permitting time. This was very common and a great desire. There were questions and concerns about homeowners associations and how they can interact with ADU production or construction. There was requests for lowering impact fees. So the impact for development is another cost away from permitting costs. And then there was a common desire for having ADUs, those are accessory dwelling units, be made that are ADA accessible. Like Council Member Moore was mentioning, ramblers. While you don't necessarily need the primary structure of a lot to be a rambler, an ADU is a great candidate to be. And ADUs come in a lot of shapes and sizes, whether it's a backyard, separate unit, or it can be an attic basement. But there are definitely forms of ADUs that can be made ADA accessible. Some things that, like direct quotes we have here is, I could move my dad in with us without having to share the TV and let him have his privacy and independence. This was a benefit that community members shared with us on why they might want an ADU. Here below is a concern. I'm worried that ADUs and duplexes will bring in more cars and tenants who don't care about the neighborhood. This is similar to some of the findings we found in the missing middle poster about maintenance concerns and if there are rental opportunities versus home ownership opportunities. And there's concerns that maybe missing middle could lead to a loss of neighborhood character. A lot of those concerns were echoed from previous community outreach engagement activities, and that's why we rely heavily on the findings from the visual preference survey to help support, or a basis for what is in the time that we consider design standards, or what does the community like to see if we were to introduce new housing types, and so the visual preference survey and those findings will be very helpful if we get to that point. Another comment we heard was the impact fees should be lower for this type of development. And a benefit being that, missing middle, like duplexes, townhouses, triplexes, they provide a downsize option for aging populations. And our townhomes are more feasible than condos or other types of development. So we had a variety of perspectives from the open house, not just community members, but also developers, organization leaders, community leaders share their opinion as well. continued conversations around transit-oriented development in downtown. That's our strategies number 1 and 2. And a lot of these are around the desire for more housing types. So we need more condos and a good mix of housing. This is also met with some opposition and without desire of more apartments in the city. There are concerns on the amount of parking that exists in downtown, and that it might be needed to be able to build these types of developments in terms of our regulations. There was excitement for housing near transit and the new light rail coming. There was, a discussion around wanting to make downtown more enjoyable and safer for pedestrians and bicyclists. And then there was discussions or concerns around whether the sound transit surplus parcels would become affordable housing units. So the school impact fees also, we received, echoed conversations around this from previous outreach. And as the developer, or from the development perspective, mentioned that, for multifamily developments to pencil, the number was around $7,500, which is much less than what the city for a multi-bedroom outside of the city center would cost. There was also a suggestion that maybe impact fees could be financed over time instead of paid at the time of occupancy. Some say lower the school impact fees, and then others keep them high. So there's still a mix, and that is consistent with what we've heard. There was opposition to considerations for strategies that promote or encourage affordable housing development. And then that was also met with, concerns about the rising cost of living, and that housing costs are going up, leading to more need for housing that is affordable, and need to help with homeless populations. So this is my last slide on the commentary and the input we received from the open house and these major themes that came up. But all in all, the results from the community open house further solidify the understanding that not every individual and every household will benefit the same from each strategy of the Housing Action Plan. However, there is a strategy or strategies within the Housing Action Plan that will benefit everyone. That's the spectrum of the spectrum of housing need that this document intends to serve. So the 3 options I present to you is option 1, to recommend adoption of the Housing Action Plan. Number 2, do not recommend approval of the Housing Action Plan and provide direction to staff, and recommend forwarding the Housing Action Plan to City Council without a recommendation. The mayor recommends adoption. And like I've said a couple times, the comments provided at the open house were consistent with input previously given by the advisory group to virtual house events that we hosted prior back in April, and individual comments submitted over time of the project. Therefore, no changes to the Housing Action Plan as presented to the council last July are proposed. That is the end of my slideshow, but if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Janie. That's interesting that, none of the changes were too many changes from July's proposal. Everyone's kind of in line with that. It's interesting to see that. Just to comment on ADUs too, because we talked about that at length, but any questions from any committee members first at all?
Janie, I liked your comment about how these, and correct me if I'm misinterpreting it, but how these housing options is going to impact people differently, no matter what. And I believe that's what I heard you say. Is that correct, Janie?
Say that last part again, sorry.
That pretty much whatever we do, whatever the housing options is, it's going to impact people no matter what.
Yes.
Is that what I heard? Yeah.
More so that like the benefits from each strategy might affect different households or individuals differently depending on their housing need.
Got it. Okay. I actually appreciate hearing that last part. Okay. I mean, I'm glad we did the open house. I mean, it's obviously we're hearing people's feedbacks. Apparently, it's just similar. So I guess we'll need to move it forward at some point after questions.
Thank you. Any other questions, committee members? Committee Member Tran, you have anything? Or move on to Council President Honda.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Council President Honda.
Thank you. Cheney, thank you very much, and all of the staff, Brian, Davis, and the staff that was there that evening for putting this open house on. I was glad to see people coming in, and I felt that it was something that was very much needed, and I really appreciate your patience with the council when we asked to do this, and doing a really good job with it, because you really did do a great job with it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, my pleasure.
I concur. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? And Janie, I don't see any right now. So if that's the case, I'm going to entertain a motion.
Councilor Tran, do you have it? My computer went to sleep.
Yeah, I can do that. Mr. Chair, I move to forward the draft housing action plan to the October 19, 2021 business agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion by Committee Member Tran, second by Committee Member Moore. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It moves forward. Thank you, Cheney.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. And I think we're down to item F. And Ryan Midland, you have the progress update on sound transit projects in Federal Way. Ryan, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Chair Baruso. Welcome, committee members, council president, and council member. My name is Ryan Medlin. I'm the Sound Transit Liaison from the city, and I am here to provide the monthly update. So starting on the Federal Way link extension, general work, including clearing and grading, is continuing along I-5, as long as the supporting walls that will support the eventual laying of the guideway. The wet season for construction officially started on October 1st, and Kiewit, the design build contractor for the project, has been installing additional wheel wash stations at key work locations and has essentially been beefing up their efforts to keep the city clean. There is utility relocation work by Sound Transit in coordination with Lake Haven that's expected to continue until mid-November. The work is to shift a water line and sewer line as well as other utilities to make room for a new guideway column on the north side of South 320th so that the guideway structure can continue across the road. This work will be continuing at night and includes shifting westbound 320th traffic down to one lane at times. The superstructure work, which is that platform being built atop the columns in the transit center area, has started. The girders were delivered and they are in the process of building it up to pour what will be the eventual station platform in that area. We may see additional girder deliveries that happen as early as November to go across 23rd and continuing that way towards I-5. They have to avoid the holiday season to limit traffic impacts in the city center area. So a lot of that's going to come down to whether they can do the work correctly ahead of the holiday traffic control moratorium. And also to let you know that the west parking garage entrance will close for construction in the near future. That's the one off 21st. It was supposed to actually close as early as last week, but currently the schedule shows starting next week. They will be doing some early utility relocations and preparatory demolition work ahead of installing a detention vault that will go under that driveway. And then they will be starting the garage expansion. they don't have permits yet, but the schedule has it coming towards the end of this year, early next year. So right now it's expected that that entrance will be closed through most of 2022 to allow that construction to occur safely. As OMF South, there's not really any updates since the last LUTC meeting, but I wanted to just bring up again that November we're expecting to get our summary of public comments on the DEIS, and we're expecting the preferred alternative to be selected. The Sound Transit Board meeting on tentatively scheduled for December 16th. No formal agendas has come out, so we'll confirm those as they get closer. And Tacoma Dome Link Extension, we have no updates since the previous LUTC meeting. And with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions? Councilmember Kochmar.
Thank you very much, Chair Brusso. So Ryan, so the west entrance is closed, but I remind me, is there another entrance on the north end or the?
Correct. There's a driveway entrance off of 23rd Avenue, their east entrance, and that one will stay open.
Okay, so are we going to, I mean, how are we going to inform people to use that entrance instead? Are we putting up signs or?
There'll be construction signs located on 21st, and they'll be doing some outreach to regular users through their mail list and things like that, because it's a Sound Transit garage, so it'll be targeted at customers.
Okay.
And then people will learn. They park there 5 days a week, so you might mess up twice, and then you'll remember.
Okay. So the OMF facility, is that November 20th or December 16th, but that they're going to select that?
So nothing has been set yet. There's no formal agenda that I can promise, but everything I've heard is December 16th is expected to be the date. But there will be information coming out starting in November.
Okay, and Ryan, one last question. Have they moved forward with the art selection for the project for this?
They are still doing community outreach with, in coordination with some community members, mainly from the Arts Commission, I believe. I've been kind of on the side expecting a summary that I'll be able to bring to council once they have something to summarize. I believe their last meeting was, 1 to 2 weeks ago. I'd have to check my emails to know the exact date, but they're still in the public outreach phase of it, and there's no new concept. As far as the timeline goes, they're still saying no earlier than towards the end of the year.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Council President Honda.
Ryan, were they not going to come to council for our input too before they? I knew they were going to go to our Arts Commission, which I appreciate, but were they not going to come to council also?
So for the core of their outreach, they're trying to reach out to community members to hear from a broad audience. The plan was that when they've done some community outreach, that they would summarize those findings and present what they've heard to the council ahead of the new art concept.
Okay.
So at that time, if they're in front of you, I'm sure they'll hear your opinion. I would hope so.
So I know last Tuesday they had something with the art and Sound Transit. We had a FedRAC meeting, so most of us were at the FedRAC meeting during the same time. Do you know, was that part of the public outreach or was that something else?
I believe that was
frozen.
Oh. I apologize if I'm frozen, but I do believe that was part of the public outreach.
Okay. Do you know how many people attended that?
I have not heard yet, no. I can inquire, but I have not heard yet.
Yeah, I'd like to know. I'd like to know how, there's so much interest when the elephant on the dead tree came up. So I don't want the public to think that these discussions are happening and they're not being included in them. I know that's not up to us as a city to get the word out. It's up to Sound Transit. It is their project, but I feel like we have some obligation to let the public know that these discussions are going on, so that if a public member wanted to be involved, that they could.
Okay. I will reach out to them to find out that number for you. And
Thank you.
And I would also remind the council that if there's any group or specific organization that they'd like them to reach out to directly, you can feel free to send that to me and I'll forward it on to them. So.
Oh, thank you. Do you know, Ryan, when there will be a decision on Belmore Park and what route they'll go through in Belmore Park?
So the final decision, I believe, it's a while. I think we're looking at 23 for the final decision. There is a preferred alternative, which is the route with that impacts the least number of units. That's already been selected as a preferred alternative, even though the DEIS hasn't been issued. But in terms of the finality that I know people are really looking for, we're probably looking at late 2030 to early 24, if I remember my calendar correctly.
Have the residents at Belmore Park been informed of the preferred alternative?
They should have been. I know they've had multiple meetings about it.
Okay.
I would assume that has come up.
Okay. And do you know how they're getting under the power lines? I've heard some discussion, but it's fascinating to me what they're going to do to get under the power lines.
The last I heard is that the Bonneville Power Administration is planning to elevate the power lines where it needs to meet the minimum clearance. So that will result in a number of the towers being replaced and the power lines increasing in height. But that's being led by the Bonneville Power Administration. So I haven't seen any final plans on that, but that has been the discussion to date.
What does that do to people's views of Mount Rainier, if anything?
As part of the DEIS, there was some discussion about a year ago that they would give us a mock-up to show what kind of visual impacts that would give. And they're well aware that the PAC in particular is a key viewpoint, both for what the viewpoint is and also for its ability to really see what the impacts of their work is. So.
Okay. Would we have any say in that decision, though? What if they decide to elevate them high enough that it would impact our view? Would we have any say in it, or it'll just be done?
So it's a hard one to answer since Bonneville Power Administration is a federal agency, and we can comment on the DEIS just like we can for anything else, but it comes a question of it'd be hard to propose a realistic alternative for the guideway because we wouldn't want it to go to at grade because that would really tie up traffic in the future city center access project. And then you can only make it go so much lower to meet minimum clearances for the roads. So the question really comes down to, do the power lines get raised or do they get buried? And aside from the usual factors of cost, ultimately that's up to the Bonneville Power Administration more than it is Sound Transit. So we can comment on it for the DEIS, but it's a little bit trickier than a lot of the other items that we talk about just because there's that element of a third and a federal agency at that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan. Ryan, do you have an idea what the height is supposed to be that they're thinking about?
I don't want to speculate because I haven't looked at that well, it was an in-person meeting the last time it was discussed, so that should tell you a time frame.
Okay. I know they had to have certain clearances, but it's pretty high as it is. So elevate that a little higher. And okay, just wondering. Thank
Yeah.
you. Any other questions, comments, Ryan? Where let him go? Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Alrighty. We're down to other business. Any other business we need to tend to coming up? Okay. Here and saying, oh, Council President Honda, I see your physical hand.
I thought I was faster.
Go ahead.
So we haven't had an airport activity report lately. And I know that there are some things going on. So could we get that on the agenda for next month to see what's going on and how
Okay.
it could impact us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr.
EJ still on there.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if my understanding, EJ, you may have some more information on that. Wasn't that on there on a permanent basis or no? Was that like a standing thing?
It was for a while, and then when I don't remember the name of the committee to be completely honest, but when they had disagreement with the FAA and disbanded,
That's
and
the
stopped meeting, it came off of this because there were no meetings for anyone to go to.
Got it. Okay.
So I can reach out to Bill. He's the one that's been coordinating all those efforts. Frankly, I don't have any idea what the status is, but I'm happy to reach out to him and ask him to be here at next month's meeting, and even if that's the extent of the update, if that's helpful to council.
That'd be
You
great.
know, I
Thank you,
think
EJ.
the Des Moines City Council was discussing it at their last meeting, and there is something with several cities going in together for some legal action, putting money in together. So Federal Way wasn't mentioned as one of those cities, but I just know that there's some things going on that might be of interest to us.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Bill. He may be very well aware of it, and if not, he's got a month to figure it out. So I'll reach out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, you're seeing none. Our next meeting will be November 1st, 5 o'clock. I'm not sure whether they're going to be Zoom still or in person. I guess we'll see. Again, November 1st, 5 o'clock. So no other business. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. I will see everyone tomorrow.
See you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.